Ja, vielen Dank erstmal für deine Performance. Thank you for your performance. Let's do English better. Now you're going to talk a bit about what you did, I guess.
All right. So,
Okay.
I was asked to talk about how I use this stuff in my work. So, tell you a secret, it's actually the first time I've ever done like a modular only performance. So, that was, so I do that sometimes. I don't know if any of you have actually ever checked out my music. Is anybody here familiar with any of my tunes? Oh yeah, okay, we got a couple ones. All right, so okay, cool. There's a few. So the way I work is, I'd say, of all the sort of music things I've done, the one that's had the most impact for me was my time in the electroacoustic world, sort of tape music. And what I learned there was to sort of treat recorded sound as an object that you can play around with, cut up. Like there's a strong visual arts analogy, I think, only because it originated with tape, literally tape. So the sound was physically on this little bit of plastic. So it really taught me to make a whole bunch of sound, basically, and rearrange it. And so thinking less like thinking less of a real-time process and more of sound object is what they call it. There's no better word. They literally call it sound objects. So the way I work nowadays, if I'm making, most of my time is spent making like techno and experimental stuff, but even the experimental stuff always has a very strong pulse in it. There's always there's a rhythm, the rhythmical structure. So the best stuff I've done in the past few years is when I jam with different instruments. Now that is contrary to what I just said about tape music. That part jamming is very real time. It's very musical. It's very physical. It's about touching the machines, and the interface what you touch has a massive impact on what comes out. So in the past couple of years, I've been working almost entirely with hardware to make my sounds. And I come up with really, really different stuff than programming it all with software. All right, before I go into all the details, let me just rewind a bit. The way I work is I generate sounds, a lot of jams, and then I edit it on the computer. And then I take the really best bits from what I did, and then I start processing it, making it really, really good. And then when I've done all that, I take all the best edits of the best bits of the best performances, and this can go over days and weeks. I take the very best stuff at the end, and then I'm like, by then I've got a good idea of how I can make some tunes. I'm like, oh yeah, that bit would work well with that bit and that bit. I kind of put them together. And then of course there's post-production, fixing it all, but that's how I work mostly. So, jam, edit, collage. That's kind of the formula. Now, where this stuff fits in, it's obviously at the very first stage. It's at the jam stage, when you find one thing that really inspires you, when I find one thing that inspires me, I can go really far with that. For example, my last 2 albums, basically I did them with this one distortion pedal that I really fell in love with, the sound. So, I would put sounds through it, but really it was all about the sound of that one distortion pedal. And same with the Endorphins. So I got my hands on this for the first time about 2 years ago. My biggest tunes in this past couple of years has been all basically the sound of the oscillator module here. And I've gone to music school and I've learned all these things and all that, but really I've been playing, I don't know if it came, I guess it came through a little bit, but I've been working on just one note. No melodies, no harmonies. I know how that stuff works, but I'm just keeping it real simple on just one note and making sure that one sound really sounds powerful or whatever I want to express. So there was the distortion pedal, and then eventually when I got this, I was like, oh yeah, that's a really nice sound. So I did a whole bunch of tunes just with the sound of this oscillator, just tweaking it just right. But then it's not like it's not like I'm worrying too much about this. I'm just playing, and oh yeah, that's the other thing. This is the secret, guys. Record everything. And start the record button before, like you go in the studio, record. So, I ended up doing a whole bunch of tunes just with this oscillator module, So does that give you a little bit of an idea of we don't have music examples. I don't have a computer screen. I'm just telling this story. But do you get a sense, a bit of? Yeah. All right. There's a couple nods. All right. Cool. That's basically how it works. And so this fits in the jam part of my process. There's been a lot of using the modular to reprocess sound. So I'll have my workstation with all the sounds I edited, and I've got Ableton. And as I'm working, I've got through this patch bay, always got cables going from the computer into the modular. And sometimes I'll just run one sound from the computer. It goes through here, through some filters, some distortions and stuff. And again, it's because this stuff is really immediate. And the immediacy you get from these physical machines is unique to physical machines. That's the way it works. I'll stop talking about my process because the rest doesn't involve modular. It's all editing and collaging, and that's all composition and intention and themes and emotions and all those other things that have to do with putting tunes together. So I can tell you a bit more about actually what endorphins make. So the stuff that I'm using when I'm jamming sounds. So I've got a big case here, but actually Endorphins, they make this system, and it works in what do you call it? One of these single row cases. Yeah. Anyway, they make a complete system. So actually it worked for me because 2 years ago I had no modular. It's my first system. So it's a basic system. Oscillator. There's 2 of them. And this module, which has 2 gates and envelopes, and this little. You see that? Oh yeah, you can see. I'll just stay here. And this bad boy here is these utilities where you can mix these the control signals, and a little mixer on the output. So all of that fit in one really nice case, which I think they sell. They call it the shuttle system. And they asked me to do this demo because they came out with this new module, which is why I spent most of the time on that. It's this little drum machine, and that drum machine is based on the. Oh yeah, I turned it off. You heard it. You heard it a whole bunch, I guess, already. It's based on the old Roland CR78, which is really nice. I don't know if you like it. It's one of those drum machines from the 70s, because there were so many from the 70s, so it's one of those. There's not that many. And it was sold with these home organs. So the home organs could have accompaniment and chords and beats, and this was like an add-on module. And so the CR78 had all these preset patterns like samba, bossa nova, my favorite foxtrot. Anywho, it's a really nice sound, and actually I came across that sound back in the 90s when I was a teenager. I was really into some music that I'm not into anymore, and there's some British producers who I thought were really cool then. Anyway, and I heard that sound a lot. The CR78 has got like this really particular little hi-hat. So yeah, that I think gives you like a basic overview, I think, of how I work and what these modules are. Oh yeah, there's all that stuff. All right, talk about that real quick and simple and pleasant. No, or long and hard and difficult. No, the first one. Okay. So what's all this? These two, I'm just using as sequencers. So the octatrack does a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm just using as a MIDI sequencer. But the whole point was this module here. What this one does, which is why I was roped into all this story. This one is a sort of interface between the digital world and the modular world. So if you're somebody like me who doesn't have a lot of modular stuff, but who's a real nerd with all this computer stuff, this one's really good. So with this one, you can, you've got all these jacks, all these 16 little outlets, and these can be anything. Well, not anything, they can be a whole bunch of stuff. And the way you configure it, so you've got all these 16 outlets, and you think, what am I going to do with them? Well, the guys at the team at Endorphins, they made this web editor that you got to go on the internet. And we all thought that was kind of inconvenient. So I made an editor which is on this thing, but I was thinking even I could make one on the iPhone, but I didn't. So we've got this one now. And the point is, you plug it in here, and then you can choose what each of one of these little jacks does. And I was using, for example, it can go on one of these, and this is all the different functions it can do. It can be an LF. You can see it can be an LFO. And obviously, there's the basics, pitch and gate. So if you're able to sending a MIDI clip, you can send notes. And there's gates, and there's triggers, and there's CCs and LFOs. There's even noise, so you can get extra noise sources, which was always convenient for me because there was actually not many noise sources. And there was these two things that comes from this Buchla, like random deterministic thing that generates random octaves and random chromatic notes. So I was using that one quite a bit to give. I like these octave modules, up and down octaves. Anyway, so a whole bunch of stuff. And what I built is this thing where you can actually configure it. So when I'm at home and when I'm jamming, I'm using this a lot to experiment really, really quick. So this controls what they do. So it's like it's an editor, it's a program, it's like your settings menu. It's like a big fancy settings menu. Then once it's set up, I was using these two to trigger the stuff. So the stuff, most of what I'd done was actually envelopes. So almost 6 of these MIDI channels here, the sequencers that were just triggering envelopes. So then that could make like these sounds on top. And yeah, and then there's random octaves, and there was a white noise and an LFO, which I did not use. Yeah, and that's, in a nutshell, that's how it works. That's all the stuff here. So, is there any questions? Is there any?
A really nice reverb. What was your reverb?
It's the reverb that they got, and they've got a shimmer. I was always using the shimmer reverb. They've got 8 effects in this module and 8 effects in this one. They've got a really nice overdrive with the filter, which I use a lot. And the reverb is a shimmer algorithm, so it's a long like sort of a call, and there's I think chorus on the delay tail or something, or pitching up and down. I think it's like that old like Daniel Lanois, Brian Eno sort of technique.
It's a real beauty.
Yeah, saved my life so many times.
I'm not sure if you know it with the mixer module. They have some very special tip rings.
Yeah.
Whatever connection.
Yes. So.
Is it just for iPads, or can it use with my favorite delay, reverb, whatever? the aux end.
You know, I'm not an expert on those. I haven't used them much. It only works with the phones and mobile devices because they've got the jacks, which has its tip ring sleeve.
Yes, yes.
And I don't know what other devices have that sort of female jack.
But
for
if
this.
I could, just technical scope, if I could manage
Oh, yeah.
to solder my
Of
own
course.
breakout cable, could I?
I mean, I'm saying,
Possible,
yeah, of course,
that's
after you
software.
sort out the problems and you get it working and yeah, sure. But yeah, in theory, I wouldn't see why not.
Okay, but it's hardware stuff and not a software stuff that this works.
Yeah, I mean, because it's they get how I'm not sure exactly how it works, but yeah, it's hardware.
Okay.
It's getting the signal out on one, back on the other, and something else on the other.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm sure it would. Yeah, technically, there's no I know enough to say that there's no reason why it wouldn't work if you would get your own connector together, or if it exists. I don't know if maybe it exists.
No, thanks.
Okay, if no questions, there's any complaints? All right, well, I'm going to hang around for a bit. So if anybody wants to chat about this stuff or about other music stuff or anything you care about, I'm gonna be here for a few moments. All right, thanks for coming.